I really wanted to talk to you this week because it's a difficult subject, this, for me as a white man to raise. But I saw this House Negro head of AFRICOM, a black African American, threaten to kill the great leader of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore. And it made me so mad, I reached out for Nico House for a point of view on it. Did you see it? And what do you think of it?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, let me say congratulations, George, on all the success that you've been having. It's well deserved. I mean, from the guests to the topics that you cover, I feel like it's not really that many people giving so much diversity. And I know that Piers Morgan is trying his best to copy you, but, you know, it doesn't quite hit the same when you're not as dedicated to the truth as a presenter as you are. So let me just say congratulations on that. And yeah, absolutely. I saw Lingley's comments about Ibrahim, how he's supposedly using the gold reserves to provide his own private security. And let me just say, first of all, that's not true. Second of all, if it was true, let's be honest, wouldn't it be somewhat justified considering the fact that they continue to make attempts on his life? I mean, they just recently made another failed attempt on his life. That's probably why they're upset and why they're now going out of their way to bring it to the attention of the national public to try and create this narrative, not unlike what we saw happen with Libya and Gaddafi, because Ibrahim has had that type of impact in West Africa when we're talking about not only uplifting Burkina Faso, but then uniting West African countries like Mali and Niger so that they can combat Western imperialism and the NATO allies that try to oppress them.
Well, that's right. His own bodyguards were offered $5 million to kill him. Now, it's no coincidence that the money involved was dollars. The United States and France are determined to do to Captain Traore what they did to so many others. In Burkina Faso, to the great Thomas Sankara, in the Congo, to the great Patrice Lumumba, and so many other leaders that they have dispensed with extreme prejudice because their own interests were threatened by an African leader who's actually governing in the interests of his own people and not of the empire.
I love Africa. It's so difficult to watch Ibrahim, I can't even say his name, Traore, in his speeches and not be absolutely like shaken to the core at the absolute dedication he has to his people. And of course, that's a threat. That's a threat to colonialists. That's a threat to the West. Having anyone who is able to gather people that were ultimately very divided in a very large continent is a threat. If you don't know, Ibrahim has already survived over a dozen assassination attempts. I think it was like 18 or something. And of course, France is threatening him. He has taken upon himself in Burkina Faso to build roads. He's putting in the infrastructure. He's taken it away from private companies to ensure there's no corruption through there. And they are on the ground building roads right now, building the infrastructure that Africa deserves. He has taken control over their own resources. And of course, this is a huge threat because these colonialist nations like France, they profit off of exploiting Africa, and they always have. A continent as rich in resources and culture like Africa, being independent and being free and being able to profit for its people, oh my God, now that's a whole new world.
If you don't know who Ibrahim Traore is, I highly recommend that you pick up some books and learn things about places that you have not been to, but that likely somewhere in your lineage, someone you are related to has helped in the pillaging of that country. As a diasporic African, I would like to just give a word of caution to everybody in the West. Because y'all have had privilege and luxury for a very long time, and you don't realize it because at the same time, simultaneously, you have also lived in poverty and deprivation. And most of that depravity happens to be in education. You've been heavily deprived of the gift of actual education and knowledge and history and culture. So I want to share with all of you something, because right now there is still something called NATO. And right now, colonizers still want to maintain power and still want to remain in control of the situation that is collapsing extremely quickly and not in their favor. And as people who are part of the core of the empire, currently I am speaking to specifically North Americans, Canadians, Americans, but even somewhat to some of the Europeans. A lot of African countries have mandatory draft. I need you to think about this. I need you to go online and Google the different populations in Africa. And I need you to look up this because they have something called a mandatory military draft, where at the very least, most of the capable men of the population are put into intensive military service and training for a period of time, and then remain essentially on reserve if they're called back. And on that note, I'd like you to look up how many successful military missions Canada and the United States were involved in. I'll give you a minute to look it up. You can pause and come back. But if you do some math, okay, and you watch what the West is doing and the threats that they are giving Ibrahim Traore, and the fact that we as Africans are telling you that having been totally screwed over and watching many of our governments get toppled over and over and over, this is not a one-time thing, by Western colonialist countries, and seeing all of us say, united in one, one continent, so multiple countries with mandatory military drafting, okay? Military service. Seeing all of those people come and say, you fuck with Ibrahim, you fucking with all of us? And I say this as a displaced individual in the West from Africa. Baby, the West is on the losing side. Big time. And y'all were worried about like double W3 being with Russia or China or whatever. This will include both of those countries and an entire continent. Potentially a lot of Asian countries too. So if you think your letters and your screaming have not been making a lot of dents with your government officials, I think it's time to panic and, act with a little bit more urgency. Because none of y'all are ready for this. Word for the wise.
Welcome back. It is one thing if you defend yourself as a black person, and it is completely a different thing when you have white people have the same point of view and defend you as a black person. Now, the continent of Africa has gone through a lot. Talk of colonialism, talk of slavery, and all these negative things that the continent of Africa has gone through. And even up until date, Africa still goes through majority of these things, but in a different way or in a different form. Neo-colonialism. So the issue of Captain Ibrahim Traore taking over his country in order to build it is something that is significant in this time and in this era. Now, Africa is a continent that has a lot of natural resources talk about the gold, the diamond, all these mineral resources are from Africa, the timber, the arable lands, and many other natural things that are found on the continent of Africa. Yet, ironically, it is the poorest continent in the world. How can this be possible? Now, whenever you mention this, a lot of people alluded to corruption, that the leaders of the African continent are corrupt. While to some extent that may hold a bit of truth, it is not entirely true that Africa is bridled with corruption, or Africa is poor because it is bridled with corruption alone. Majority of these natural resources are being siphoned by colonial masters. Take France, for instance, who has about 14 countries who are former colonies of France. And even as at now, they keep about 50% of their country's reserve in France. So in essence, they are just working to support the economy of France. Now let's turn our attention to General Michael Langley making the statement about Captain Ibrahim Traore that he is using the gold reserve to protect his junta regime. Come to think of it, this is never true. If we look at the developments or developmental projects that are going on in Burkina Faso, it is really great. A lot of people admire all these developmental progress that has been made in the country of Burkina Faso in terms of housing, factories, and many other things that he is providing for his people in the country of Burkina Faso. Even if it is true that he's using the gold reserve to protect his junta regime, he is a citizen of Burkina Faso. So what is the interest of the United States in Burkina Faso protecting their gold reserve? If their leader wants to use the gold reserve to his advantage, it is upon the people to rise up and prevent that from happening. It is not an external country or an external force who has to come in and intervene. That is not the real notion behind it. The real notion is there for everyone to know. It is obvious, just as the white man said in the video. Now, Africa has come to a point where it has to take advantage of its natural resources, and majority of these Western countries are not ready to let go for Africa to be completely free. Even though they give some form of political independence to us, they never give us economic independence. They want us to always be coming to their doorsteps and be pleading for aids and grants, which should not happen in this century and beyond. Leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traore need to be protected at all costs. And I really like the point of view of this white man who shared his views on what General Langley Michael said about Captain Ibrahim Traore. Now, it is very important for every African to stand up or rise to the occasion in order to defend the continent of Africa, so that Africa can also be respected among the human race. Let me know what you also think about all these in the comment section below. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family on other social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe button down here. Click on the subscribe button. Click as well on the notification bell. And I'd like to see you again in my next video.